We cannot have Dance Floor Misery sweeping the nation, although that would be such a great summer single.
Dance Floor Misery
sweeping the nation. I think it's pretty good.
Oh my God.
I think it's a hit.
I mean, we know it's a hit when we wrote the same song at the same time.
Yeah. I'm Charlie Sohn, a screenwriter and journalist.
I'm Agnes Reese, a pop singer and songwriter.
And this is Mysteries of the Euroverse.
On this episode, we're exploring Sweden's domination of global pop.
First, we trace Sweden's relationship to pop music throughout history, tracking the parallels with the country's success in Eurovision.
Then, we sit down with pop and EuroDance star Dr. Alban and find out what it was like to be launched to international fame from the legendary Cheiron Studios hit factory.
Finally, we sit down with Deborah Ann Woll, who has starred in True Blood and Daredevil, as we try to find out what makes Sweden's hits so special in a game we're calling Victory is Oh So Swede.
Look behind the scenes at all the scandal songs and queens. So come along as we traverse all the mysteries of the Euroverse. All the mysteries of the Euroverse.
All right, we are back with another episode of Mysteries of the Euroverse.
We've had deep dives into politics the last two episodes. So this week we're keeping it a little lighter as we look at Sweden's domination in pop music.
Actually, what's funny about this, though, is there might be more politics than you think.
Anyone who knows Eurovision knows that Sweden dominates Eurovision.
Yes.
However, Swedes have dominated American pop music.
Given how small Sweden is as a country in terms of people, it's the third largest music exporter in the world, behind the US and the UK. Just to pull an example from an article we found that was written in May of 2012, in that month, half of the top 10 songs on the Billboard Hot 100 were written or produced by Swedes.
I thought it was really funny, like when we interviewed Andrew Lambrou, he gets flown to Cyprus to represent them, and then they're like, we have our song, and then they flew him to Sweden to record it.
Oh my God, I didn't even remember that.
You know, and you think about the US, that someone will be in Alaska and they'll fly to Nashville to record their song.
Well, and also, frankly, you think about the US, you'll be in Orlando and you will fly to Stockholm to record your album. So this is frequent. How did this small country come to dominate one of the biggest entertainment industries in the world? You will get literally people saying like, well, it's dark all the time, so the Swedes have more time to work on their music.
It's cold, so you don't go outside.
Yeah. The thing that was so surprising to me is Sweden coming to dominate pop music came from the country's efforts, at least initially, to keep pop music as far away from Sweden as possible.
Sweden has a very musical culture, and this idea of like sing-alongs are very popular in Sweden. Side note, that certainly has been the case for Norway as well.
It's been the case for several gay bars in the West Village, too.
Right. So you have something called Allsång på Skansen, which has been running since 1935. It still runs today. Allsång essentially means sing-along. We're talking thousands and thousands of people. And I think that in American culture, we don't have as much of this culture of like, we're going to sing together.
The sort of primary way that Americans experience music is alone in their car crying with the volume cranked all the way up. If your take on music is participatory, is that everyone should have access to it, it's going to lead you to have a certain aesthetic and make certain decisions. But in 1935, what we're talking about as a music culture is very participatory, but there's nothing that you would straight up call popular music. What is getting celebrated? Old folk tunes, religious hymns, these national songs. Then something changed, right?
The devil's music arrives.
Yes, popular music's arrival, which I think really you can connect back to World War II for two reasons. One, American GIs are all over Europe, right? So American jazz, swing music. And then you think about the Germans, they had a kind of music called Schlager. And Schlager literally just means hit songs. It's kind of cheesy, it's sentimental. Like we had jazz, we had swing, we had Schlager, all entering the country for the first time.
Once that rhythm arrives, you start dancing. And when you start dancing, you start gyrating. When you start gyrating, people have sex.
If you are a cultural conservative, there are actually two fronts in which this was problematic. The first is exactly what you said. Secondarily, there's the idea of nationalism, these styles of music that are foreign and that kids are gravitating to. So there is this crisis.
So they start something called municipal music schools. And, the best way to describe it from an American point of view is after-school programs.
Right.
It's free.
These municipal music schools were set up explicitly with the purpose of teaching good music, moral music, classy music.
No gyrating allowed.
Yes, exactly. On one level, these programs succeeded. Suddenly, you had a generation that was super passionate about music, but they wanted the music that they wanted. The church and conservative politicians, they created the most intense pop music market that existed. And the proof of this is the Beatles, their first tour outside of the UK, they went to Sweden. The Beatles' first performance in Sweden was in 1963. In 1959, Sweden held its first public national selection for Eurovision. So these stories really from their beginning are in parallel.
As we go into the 60s and early 70s, something that still to this day has a huge effect on Scandinavian society, dance bands.
Yes.
And this comes out of Schlager. There's definitely very little sadness in dance band.
Yeah.
It's all happy all the time.
Swedish Schlager, Swedish dansband, ABBA, and then even as we get to the bubblegum pop of the 90s, we're talking about music that really is just get them up and dancing, grab them very quickly. Dansband performers, the costumes were big, over the top, fun. This was like one of my favorite anecdotes.
It was so funny to me to see you dig this up.
Oh, so you were familiar with
yeah,
this?
100%.
I was just like, this is insane. For tax purposes, if you declare an outfit that you've bought as a fantasy outfit, you can deduct it. Because the idea is if you have a really over-the-top costume, you can only wear that on stage.
Financial incentives from a government can really have a strong push on something in one direction or another.
It's the story of the municipal schools. Like the church wanted to change culture. They had money to do it. And they did change culture, but it was entirely in the opposite direction. This all came to a head in 1974 when Blue Swede became the first Swedish band to have a #1 hit on the Hot 100. At the same time, ABBA wins Eurovision with Waterloo.
ABBA was a band consisting of Agneta Fältskog, Björn Ulvaeus, Benny Andersson, and Anfrid Lyngstad. Now, they did enter Eurovision the year before as those 4 names fully written out. You can probably imagine that that would have been less successful in American market.
Which is the continuing story of Sweden's global pop success, right? Where it's like a real willingness to be like, all right, just call us ABBA.
And if you listen closely to those names, that is the initial of the 4 members.
The 5th most important person having to do with ABBA is Stig Andersen.
He coined the name ABBA. He's the one who's, this needs to be more simple. He had a real sense for commercialism.
With ABBA, it's really about the vocal stacking. We're not just talking harmony here. What we are talking about is like literally the exact same melodic line sung by the exact same singer, stacked on top of itself, recorded over and over again to give a fullness to the sound that when it's mixed down, it punches in a different way.
That's wild to think that a song that was entered into Melodifestivalen in 1974 would be that present in people's awareness today.
Right. One thing that sort of sits in the backdrop of this is a new cultural policy that the Swedish government committed to in 1974. And it was about working against this sort of encroaching commercialism. So now suddenly you had them agreeing to host this major, big commercial pop music festival.
They basically stage a counter festival to Eurovision. Alternative Festival, like literally the name stands in opposition to Eurovision.
Yeah.
This is such a backlash that Sweden does not participate in 1976.
They poured a lot more money into music education, just hoping that the kids would finally learn what good music is. Again, it had the opposite effect.
We do see a continued rise of Swedish success. The final countdown. Do-do-do-do. Do-do-do-do-do.
It's the final countdown.
By the band Europe, but by Europe, they really meant Sweden.
Yes, exactly.
Roxette, you know, listen to your heart. If you look at these songs, what do they have in common? They're all in English.
Yeah.
And at this moment, Eurovision has a rule that you have to do the song in an official language of your country. So Sweden can't enter with an English song.
In between ABBA's major success and this big Swedish chart success that we're going to talk about in 1992, we have two Swedish wins in Eurovision.
Right. The first one, the Harrys.
And you had Carola in 91. Viewing these two together, this sort of model of the pop princess and the model of a boy band. It really sets us up for the modern era of Sweden dominating pop music.
And this is where we have to talk about a group with two men and two women who had huge international success.
ABBA!
Ace of Base.
All that she wanted was another ABBA.
All that she wants is just another baby.
This is the only deep dive where Magnus has been inspired to sing every title of a song. And I think that does really get to something that exists in Swedish music.
All that she wants is another baby. She's gone tomorrow, boy. All that she wants is
You had Cheiron Studios, which was started by this producer, Dennis Pop. He gets this All That She Wants demo. Dennis would get demos all the time and might drown out on your desk. The demo cassette got stuck in his cassette player in the car. So anytime he didn't want silence in the car, he was forced to listen to this demo.
And he fell in love with it and reworked the track. He kind of innovated and changed the songwriting process, right?
Just the pure sound of real instruments is not entirely where music lives anymore. It can go in so many different directions with electronic sounds. So the producing role becomes its separate creative role all in of itself.
A perfect way of talking about this is Carole King, right? When she sat down and wrote, "You Make Me Feel Like a Natural Woman," she was like, oh, that's a great lyric, or that's like a cool tune. Then she goes to her piano. Cheiron Studios would be like, let me send this beat to you. And then I'm a top line writer. And by top line, they mean melody, right? I'm going to go in there and I'm just going to sing words that come to my head randomly. And a melody is going to somehow come out of that.
Before, the idea of that you could do anything that had to do with production before there was a song there, it would be insane.
Process dictates product, right?
100%. A favorite meme you see on the internet. And it's comparing Bohemian Rhapsody to Who Run the World.
Right.
Is this the real life? Is this just fantasy? And it will be like one writer. And then they'll have Who Run the World Girls, Who Run the World Girls written like 14 times. And then there'll be like 10 writers.
Yeah.
And Who Run the World, if you just deduct all singing, basically in its entirety, already was a song,
right.
An instrumental number, almost like a song that functioned purely as a produced track. Does that mean it doesn't have any writers?
Right. Beyond who gets credited as a songwriter is the fundamental implication of that meme. There's this story that Stephen Sondheim always tells. He was very famously mentored by Oscar Hammerstein. Oh, What a Beautiful Morning. Sondheim was like, looking at it on the page, I would be embarrassed to put those words down. Like that is so basic, but Oscar Hammerstein knew how those words were going to sit on a melody.
I remember someone told me that the whole philosophy behind the choreography in the Mamma Mia musical, but it's purposefully made so everyone in the audience feels like they can do it.
Dennis Pop, when he was working on a song, he would take it to a club, he would give it to the DJ, and he would watch people dancing. And if he saw anyone in the crowd during a section walk over to the bar or something, he'd cut it and he'd write a new section. We're talking about like a version of a participatory kind of music, right? This is all sung in 90s pop music form. Dennis Pop did not play the piano well. He kind of turned that into his brand, this idea of the hit rake, right? So if you think about a rake, it's got different prongs. The three fingers that you use to play a very simple chord, that's your hit rake. Dennis Pop starts Cheiron. He shepherded the careers of Swedish pop stars like Robin, Dr. Alban, who's our guest on this episode,
Whoop, whoop.
and a little Swedish metal band called It's Alive, who had a member in it named Max Martin. And when the band breaks up, Dennis takes Max Martin under his wing on the songwriting and producing side, and history is made.
And to the Broadway buffs, Max Martin is the Sondheim to Dennis Pop's Oscar Hammerstein.
Oh my God, I think we just lost half of our listeners. This era that we're going to be talking about is defined by Swedish producers and songwriters actually importing American acts into their studios in Stockholm and writing them the smash hits that would define them. I think it is really interesting that the domination of Swedes over pop music has been on the producing side.
There was a poem written in Denmark, Janteloven, or in Swedish, Jantelagen. It's basically a poem that says that you are not to think you are anything special.
What is the industry that is stereotypically the opposite of that? It is pop music. It is the idea that you will become an icon to hundreds of millions of people around the world.
Right.
And you will become more than human almost to them. On the songwriting and producing side, it actually probably is a more comfortable way for Swedes to square the circle.
Totally.
There's this thing in Swedish pop that seems to gravitate towards, we have nothing to do with Sweden. And actually, we don't exist in a place, which actually makes it perfect global pop, right? All That She Wants has this like totally bizarro reggae beat. Baby One More Time, and this is mind-blowing to me, was an attempt to write a R&B song. Before Britney was involved at all, they sent it to TLC. T-Boz had two objections to the song. The first was, I cannot imagine TLC singing this song. The implication being, like, this is not an R&B song.
Yeah.
Again, Max Martin was in a metal band before he started producing I Want It That Way for the Backstreet Boys. Like, all of it is music. Like, we can grab from here, we can grab from here.
In their minds, they wrote, Hit Me Up Again, Baby, One More Time.
Like, on my cell phone.
Correct.
The song was released under the title Baby One More Time because most people heard it as either an S&M song or a straight up abuse song. All That She Wants Is Another Baby is not a song about a woman looking to adopt.
They watch some Hollywood movies and they're like, oh, all of the Americans say, hey, baby, can you, or hey, babe, you know.
What does I want it that way mean? What way do you want it? And no one has any clue because it's definitely not in the song.
Part of the point is like the level of English in Sweden is very high for a non-English speaking country. Still not the first language.
It's the combination of the two, right? Like Swedes are very good at English. They're very able to submit an English language song that sounds like an English language song. And that really opens them up to, you know, a lot more voters. If English is your second language, you have a much better sense of what someone who's not super familiar with English is going to find weird in a song.
So much of the world are going to listen to this and not really grab the lyrics. Those other elements are more important.
Right. To go back to Ace of Base, they did an interview with one of the members, Ulf Ekberg. He actually articulated exactly this. I'm not saying the lyrics are not important, but for us Swedes, for whom English is our second language, we just try to make it understood by a world audience. There's something that is never generic about one of those like lyrics that is so weird.
Right, because you haven't heard it before.
You absolutely haven't heard it before. Not in a song, not in a sentence, not in anything.
Well, and there's almost this sort of element of how a song can have a quirk or a personality almost.
It's so memorable that when a song like Baby One More Time came out, it essentially launched a revolution in music globally. Right. At the forefront of that was Cheiron Studios. Now, unfortunately, Dennis Pop died at the age of 35 from stomach cancer. But those producers, pretty much all Swedes, went on to basically create the pop music environment that we live in today.
And the most famous of those is Max Martin. He has written or co-written 25 Billboard Hot 100 #1 hits.
He has the second most #1 singles on the charts, behind only Paul McCartney and tied with John Lennon. And we sort of mentioned this before, Sweden's relationship to Eurovision.
Oh, right, Eurovision. Which then takes us to 1999.
Yes.
Charlotte Nilsson,
Yeah.
now Charlotte Pirelli, wins Melodifestivalen with a song in Swedish. But this same year, Eurovision removes the language rule. And they quickly get into that room and they say, make it English now. And the first year in a long time where there's been no language rule, Charlotte Nilsson wins the competition, the whole shebang,
Right.
with Take Me to Your Heaven.
I love that song and I love that performance. But if you look at 74, you're talking about the cutting edge of Swedish pop music winning at Eurovision. Charlotte Pirelli, formerly Charlotte Nilsson, it would never have come out of Cheiron, right? You had essentially two separate communities. We're painting this in a pretty black and white way, but there was still crossover during this time, right? A teenage Robin actually competed in Melodifestivalen as a co-writer and producer.
Du gör mig hel igen.
In that same year, her Dennis Pop, Max Martin hit dominated the global charts, Show Me Love.
And I think that the 1999 win is important because the hosting in 2000
Yes.
is a really big Eurovision. It was an inflection point for the competition. And it was very well received. The new generation, inspired by Max Martin and all that, they're now going, ooh, maybe Eurovision is a way forward.
Right. And part of that story actually does involve literally Max Martin himself, right? We talk about in our very first episode, Justin Timberlake's performance as an interval act. He performed Can't Stop This Feeling, a Max Martin song.
Mm-hmm.
Recently, he did write a little song called Supermodel for a band that our listeners may be familiar with, Måneskin. The fact that Max Martin songs are appearing on the Eurovision stage, or the fact that Eurovision artists are singing Max Martin songs, says something about Eurovision's relationship to pop music, right?
Absolutely. Even if Max Martin's not writing these Eurovision songs, Red One, who's worked with Lady Gaga, nominated for 8 Grammy Awards and won 2 of those. Cassiopeia, who competed as an artist this year in Melodifestivalen, she's worked with Pink, Cher, Jessica Simpson, and also, again, Lady Gaga. So you have this new generation of Swedish pop mega producers. They're now seen on the Melodifestivalen stage. And that's why that win with the song that might feel like it was not forward-looking was important, because it started shifting the winds.
Yeah, I think this is where Loreen becomes very important to the story, right? Both because, Cassiopeia and Jimmy Thornfeld were songwriters on Loreen's tattoo. But also, in talking about how we get from Charlotte Pirelli to where we are now, there really is euphoria, which brought Eurovision really back to the charts in a big way. And I think, particularly for Swedes, changed the brand of the contest. We're now entering this era of K-pop domination, right? And so there's a way of looking at this and being like, oh, wow, I guess we're moving out of the Sweden era. But we already see it with Cassiopeia, Ludwig Evers, Jonathan Gusmark, Ellen Berg. I mean, these are major Swedish songwriters who are now behind major K-pop hits.
For a lot of the Scandinavians, and I think this comes back to the law of Janty and all that as well, don't stick your head out of the crowd.
Yeah.
Assimilation was a real goal.
Yeah.
Like, you got to this new land, you changed your last name, you really tried to blend in.
Yeah.
The reason why they're like, oh, this is a little reggae, oh, this is a little R&B, it's that there almost isn't this pressure to be, this is me.
Right.
I don't need people to be like, ooh, Swedish beats, ooh, Swedish this. The Swedish pop era has a real possibility of lasting forever, because wherever popular music goes, Sweden has both shown ability and willingness to go with it.
Yes, 100%. I think that's a perfect place to leave this.
So let's get to our interviews.
Yes, I am so excited for both of our guests. First, we are talking to Dr. Alban, who has sold over 16 million records worldwide. And more importantly for this podcast, was part of that original Cheiron Studios group that, changed pop music in the 90s forever. And I think a thing that you'll sort of see in this interview that I thought was so cool was that, Cheiron started out as a group of DJs. And, Dennis Pop, who created this revolution, really came out of that DJ world. And it was the marrying of him and then eventually Max Martin, who was more of a traditional musician, that created this new sound.
It's that lesson of when you take something from one industry and move it to another. What these DJs brought was this idea that the only thing that matters is to keep people dancing. And that really was the key to how a tiny little place in Stockholm with a small group of DJs could come to redefine pop music, even in America.
Yeah, absolutely. And so then next we are talking to Deborah Ann Woll, who has starred in True Blood as Jessica, in Daredevil as Karen Page, and is just a tremendous actress. But we are going to use none of those skills as we make her listen to a bunch of Swedish Eurovision numbers and try to figure out what makes these Swedish pop songs so special. It's a game we're calling Victory is Oh So Swede.
And I will point out, as I did last week, that Swedish was spoken a lot on True Blood. So, what a tie-in.
Yeah, look, we're doing it. We're tying it in.
But before we get to Deb, let's throw it over to Dr. Alban and let's listen to his song, Sing Hallelujah.
Sing hallelujah.
We are here with international pop star Dr. Alban, who has sold over 16 million records worldwide. His hits, which include Hello Africa, No Coke, It's My Life, and Sing Hallelujah, have gone silver 7 times, gold 30 times, and platinum 30 times. He was part of the iconic Cheiron studios, and if that's not enough, he's a trained dentist as well.
Welcome, Dr. Alban. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
What kind of music did you listen to growing up? What were your influences?
I listened a lot to the so-called juju music in Nigeria with Fela Kuti. And that has developed to what it is today. And I listened a lot to James Brown, and I did listen a lot to Diana Ross, Donna Summer, Kool and the Gang, and all that.
How did you get into DJing?
I was in the university and there was no money, so I had to do something. I started cleaning in the club. The DJ that never showed up one night. So, the guy told me, can you go and just play however. So that's how I started being a DJ.
I love that. It's just kind of stumbled your way there, but then it worked out.
Yeah, I mean, it worked out incredibly, right? Just for our listeners, give them a sense of what the music scene in Stockholm was like at that point when you were DJing. And can you talk a little bit about how you came to Eurodance as a genre?
At that particular time, it was a lot of 90s hip-hop in Sweden. We're talking about Public Enemy, we're talking about Run DMC, LL Cool J, and all that. And then came this Europop swing that everybody was doing in Europe. So as a DJ, I played both the American stuff and the European stuff as well. I met Dennis Pop, and he was also a DJ in one of the clubs I played at. We started talking and we said, well, let's do something. Because I was like chatting and talking in between records and saying some funny stuff, and he seemed to like it. And then we said, let's do something about it.
What did you learn about what makes an effective song from DJing?
When you're able to keep them on the dancing floor, that beat or that voice keeps the people on the dancing floor. You need a floor filler all the time as a DJ. And if you cannot feel the floor, then you're not a good one. So we were thinking about that thing that fills the floor, that thing that you say or play, or that beat or that bass or that drum that fits the floor. That was what is important. Anything else wasn't important.
What was the environment like in those early days at Cheiron Studios?
It was like a group of 6 DJs that, joined together. And then after a while, they broke up, and then Dennis Pop started Cheiron. So it was like DJs running in and out of that studio. Dennis Pop, of course, he was a DJ as well. There were no real producers or guitar players or bass players or songwriters. Everybody was the DJ, including me. So that was the vibe. Almost at the end of it came Max Martin. Max Martin wasn't there at the beginning. And then when Dennis Pop passed, he continued with it. And he moved to America, where he's is making millions and millions of hits now.
Yeah.
Max Martin was not a DJ, he's a musician. So that deviated from the whole thing. So when he came, it was like, okay, where does he fit in the beginning? And then he started working together with Dennis Pop, then he became something else.
Can you talk about what the dynamic was like between Dennis Pop and Max Martin?
Dennis Pop was the king. He was the man that started everything, was the man that behind Cheiron and all that. Max Martin just came behind and joined. He was not deciding much in the beginning, definitely.
What is good subject matter for a song for you?
I don't sit down and discuss that this is good or this is bad. I just write things that I don't like and things that I like. If I like it, I say, wow, let's write about this, I like it. Or let's write about this, I don't like it. Just like No Coke, Anti-Drug song. I don't like drugs, and I just wrote about it.
As you became a performing artist, did you consider entering Melodifestivalen?
So I was all dissing it and didn't like it. I was being pushed to doing it. And from the beginning, I didn't want to do it. I didn't like it. The repetition was like so.
Yeah.
But it's kind of gaining popularity now than before.
You did it in 2014, and obviously that's post-Euphoria. Was sort of that post-Loreen moment part of that decision for you?
Definitely, it was. It's gaining more popularity and there's more hype into it now than before.
Can you walk our listeners through how you go about putting together a song from beginning to end?
I just get into the studio and I just vibe. Sometimes it's like that, sometimes it's like this, sometimes like this, sometimes like this. It is different from songs. It's never been like that. This is a formula. This is the way we do it. When we got stuck, we just have to leave the studio. We don't force it. We just have to close the studio and leave and come back the next day.
Is there something you would say are the most important elements of a song to you?
When you remember it, and then you can sing it, and then you get off the studio, you still remember it, and then you play it for somebody else, and then they keep singing it. When the melodies are catchy, they're good enough that you can remember them. I mean, they're pretty new songs to me, even as a writer, and I am able to sing it, and I remember it after a while. And I play it for somebody else and the person still remembers that, and then it shows that it has a potential to be a hit song.
Is there one thing in particular that you picked up from your collaboration with Dennis Pop?
We worked very close together. We worked very good. The chemistry was fantastic. We worked with a lot of bass and a lot of drums. Everything we did was too heavy. It was like heavy, really. Good drums, good bass line. We knew that's Dr. Alban.
One Love was a phenomenal success, even bigger than Hello Africa. What changed in your approach to that second album?
If you listen to Hello Africa, tell me how you're doing. And It's My Life, the chorus of It's My Life was more catchier than Hello Africa, tell me how you're doing. Just as I said before, when you can sing along, then it makes the song bigger than the other one. That's one of the most important things. Sing hallelujah. There were songs you can sing along in the second album than the first album.
What was that level of fame like?
We suddenly found ourselves in that position. We knew they were better tracks than the first album. They were more catchier than the first album. But still, we could not tell how big it could be. So what to do? We just continued.
At Cheiron, you also worked with Christian London. Can you talk about that collaboration and what that was like?
They were with me in Dr. Records, my label. Then I sent them to Cheiron.
Afterwards? Oh, I didn't realize that.
They're my guys originally. I was recording in Cheiron as well. I was recording in Dr. Records. So Dr. Records was mine. Cheiron wasn't mine.
Dr. Records, was that around Look Who's Talking?
Yeah, that Look Who's Talking album is Dr. Records, yeah. The first two was Cheiron thing, and then the Look Who's Talking album, the number 3 album, I decided to record it in Dr. Records. Even though I had some songs still was recorded in Cheiron Studios. But most of the songs in that album was done with me, with Christian Lundin, was produced in Dr. Records by Dennis Pop. He came over.
Did it change the working relationship with him working in your studio on your label as opposed to Cheiron?
At that particular stage, everything got so big. It was Ace of Base, it was Backstreet Boys, it was NSYNC, it was, what's her name again from America, the girl?
Britney Spears. Yeah.
Britney Spears, yeah. It was everybody. So that studio was crowded.
Yeah.
There were too many people that came looking for Dennis Pop. We started it, but they joined the chorus.
You're originally from Nigeria, and 2 of your hits directly reference Africa. Can you talk about how your heritage plays into your music? And what do you think it is about Swedish pop music that makes it so successful globally?
The drums in my songs, that's what I got from Africa. And Dennis Pop knew I wanted to have these heavy drums. And then the Swedish thing, what is it? I mean, everybody's asking that. That question could be very difficult to answer, exactly why. But I guess that everyone in Sweden speaks English. So that makes it easier to communicate in English language when you're writing songs.
Can you talk about Born in Africa and how that came to be?
Being like from Africa, it was natural for me to write Born in Africa.
Yes. True.
Just like born in the USA, born in Africa. So it's like, yeah.
That's incredible.
Natural, very natural.
In subsequent years, you moved out of EuroDance. What was the inspiration for the change for you?
When you write songs and it's monotonous, it's good to deviate a little bit, diversify it, make it sound different, and then people that wouldn't think that you're running out of ideas. Sometimes it sounds reggae, sometimes it sounds very African, sometimes it sounds very Europop. So I got these three styles, and I've been moving from one part of it to the other part.
How would you describe EuroDance's legacy and influence on the world?
I look at it like two DJs, Dennis Pop, Dr. Alban. I wasn't famous, he wasn't famous. Nobody knew us. From that, we made things that the world is talking about. And too many people had to record with Dennis Pop. If Dr. Alban and Dennis Pop was not famous, people wouldn't come to the Cheiron studio. So I see it as a legacy.
When you look back, how would you characterize your musical journey?
If I look back, I think it's been quite good and successful. If I wouldn't say successful, then I must be stupid.
I think 16 million is a decent number, right?
Yeah.
The debut single and debut album was 1990.
Yeah.
It's 34 years now. These songs are still being played. It's crazy that I could live comfortably without even doing anything from the royalties and when the songs are being played in radio and TV. So it's fantastic to be able to live on things that you did for 34 years ago. It's fantastic.
To wrap up, because this has been such a fantastic interview, what inspires you these days? What kind of music are you listening to now?
I just don't listen to any particular thing. I just, that's a good song. It doesn't matter what it is. There must be something in it. It could be whatever. It could be Arabic song is wow. The melody is good. It could be rock and roll. It could be whatever. Once the melody is good, it's good.
That's a perfect place to end the interview. So, Dr. Alban, thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
It's a real honor to get to talk to you.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Euroverse.
Swedish artists and producers are absolutely dominant on the global pop charts. And a large part of the story of Sweden's dominance can be told through Eurovision.
So today we're asking what makes those Swedish Eurovision winners so special. We're going to examine all of this in a game that we're calling Victory is Oh So Swede with Deborah Ann Woll.
I always enjoy a good pun.
I know you did. I crafted that for you.
Oh, I appreciate it.
And you know I love a good pun.
Well, that's true. Deb, cover your ears. I crafted that for you.
Oh. Great.
We already have a love triangle. Magnus and I will compete for the love of Cheiron.
Yeah.
Oh my God. It's all I've ever
reality
wanted.
show.
Before we jump into this conversation, we should probably introduce our guest.
Yes.
Hello.
Yeah. You probably know Deborah from her role as Jessica Hamby on True Blood, her role as Karen Page on Daredevil, The Defenders, and The Punisher. Or you may have seen her in her Helen Hayes-nominated performance as Harper in Tony Kushner's Angels in America,
Oh, you guys.
Millennium Approaches. Deb, welcome.
Thank you.
Didn't we say
Mentioned
stunning?
My play. It's so nice. No one ever mentions my play in my...
I know, it is always striking when someone remembers theater.
We need our first sponsor to be Tums.
Yeah.
Because it would just naturally... Charlie would just go, excuse me, but I'll be fine now because of Tums.
I think they should integrate ads into podcasts more.
That's what's ruining television so great.
Yeah, exactly.
Integrated ads.
I find it kind of fun.
Well, as the person who often is relegated to the task of doing the integrated ads,
Oh, no. You have to do the
I did all this research and it wouldn't have been possible if I didn't have my Dell laptop. But look what I found. It'll solve the case.
I have to say, Deb has a unique talent for saying the unsayable, because I believe your first guest star, you were playing a character who, in the final scene, you confront your abuser and you attempt to shoot him.
Yes.
And your line, when you had a gun out pointed at the man, was, "You have to die."
Yes.
If you're watching a show and someone pulls out a gun and they aim it at a person, you kind of can fill in that blank, like that subtext. So your big challenge was to figure out why a person would say that.
Why would you double down after the very clear action?
It was because you have to die at the fate of this Smith & Wesson handgun.
Exactly. Totally.
20% off.
Self-cleaning. Yes, 20% off.
Wow. Shooting that man was so stressful. Thank God I have Tums. So Deb is clearly an amazing actress, and we are very thankful to have her on this podcast for that. But I think we timed this pretty well because we are catching Deb just as she has been steeped in Nordic mythology.
Yes.
So do you want to tell us a bit about that?
Well, sure. I know very, very little about modern Sweden and modern Swedish culture, but...
I didn't tell you. This is 19th century Eurovision that we're covering.
Fantastic. There's a fantastic book of monsters called Väsen, illustrated and written by Johan Egerkrans. And it is basically an accounting of this Scandinavian mythology, which is fascinating for North Americans because while it bears some similar themes, the creatures themselves are very new and specifically, uniquely different. My writing partner and I have the rights to the Book of Monsters from Johan.
That book, Väsen, was the inspiration for ABBA's Waterloo.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. No, but it is interesting when you were talking about what was so fascinating to you about engaging with this mythology that feels like in one way familiar to Americanized fairy tales, but in one way completely different. And everything you said is entirely my relationship to Eurovision.
I have never done Ancestry.com, so I only have this like anecdotally through a family tree, but I have Scandinavian heritage through Scotland.
Deb, we're now considering you an expert on Scandinavian pop music. Shall we?
So, yes.
Okay.
So, this is how the game's going to work. The competition in Sweden to get to Eurovision is called Melodifestivalen. And we're going to play you clips from Melodifestivalen. Either that performance went on to go to Eurovision and win the whole competition, or they didn't win their national final, so it didn't go to Eurovision at all.
We're playing this game essentially to explore what the difference is between these songs that Sweden sent to Eurovision and the ones that didn't make it. And hopefully through that, we can have a bit of a broader conversation about what makes the Swedish Eurovision winners so special.
Okay.
And therefore, what is the secret to Sweden's global pop dominance?
Sure.
You can think of like a national final like Melodifestivalen as like an American Idol style competition, except everybody's bringing an original song.
So Sweden actually have an international jury to make sure that they can increase their chances of international success.
So the idea is like, we're not just trying to send like Swedish culture, we're trying to win this thing.
Right.
And there is nothing Swedes care about more than this competition.
No.
This is like their
healthcare. Those are the two. When they instituted televoting in Melodifestivalen in 93, so many people voted that the Swedish telephone network went down.
That's cool.
Yeah. It was probably really fun for everybody who needed an ambulance. But oh my God, healthcare and Melodifestivalen in conflict.
Oh.
But when they had to choose, they chose Melodifestivalen.
This is where we get to the clips. We're going to go to 2008. This is Sanna Nilsson with Empty Room.
Empty room, empty heart. Since you've been gone, I must move on.
Oh, I like they've got all the phone, the lights going. What year is this?
2008.
She got big and she's brought it back in. Very impressive. So she's fantastic. My gut is she didn't go on. But part of me does want to wonder context because she's like a powerhouse female singer. And I'm curious if at this time, and you said 2008?
Yes.
I'm not a pop music person. I don't have a cultural understanding of what the world was into at that time.
So I think what might take a little bit of the pressure off contemporary pop charts, right? They're very youth driven. Eurovision, and I think therefore Melodifestivalen, it's billed as a family show.
Okay.
Grandma's voting too.
There are people who might grow up with like a Whitney Houston,
Yes.
which this feels similar to.
Right,
Or
right.
but there's also things in here that sound a little bit like American country, which is always very popular.
Right.
Do I think this would be the type of number that would like sail above the rest? For me personally, she's very talented, but the song itself feels like it doesn't necessarily rise to the top.
Yeah.
Well, you're 100% correct.
Okay.
It did
Nailed
not
it.
make it to Eurovision.
So next, we have a little band you may have heard of called ABBA.
Mm-hmm.
This song is Ring Ring and was in Melody Festivalen in 1973.
Yes, I'm down and feeling blue, and I don't know what to do. Oh, ring, ring, why don't you give me a call? Ring,
So I love the outfit.
happy song.
That they have like cats on their shirt is so great. Yeah, it's so tight. I love the hair. It's all Farrah Fawcett's like
Oh my God, yes. the way they are
blowout.
styled.
So my gut is yes, that this went on. I cheated because I think you told me it was 50 years for since that win. And if this is 73, then that makes sense that I should be the one. So I'm cheating a little bit. But one thing that is interesting me, it has that quality to it. Whereas the first one felt a little more sort of generically pop as opposed to like Swedish pop,
Yeah,
maybe.
although, Deb, and this
Yeah?
is going to be a little bit of a twist.
Oh.
You're incorrect.
I'm incorrect. Okay,
Yeah.
so because I thought so maybe that the festival was in 73, which would make Eurovision 74.
Came back in 74.
74 competed in Melody
With-
Festival and
I
Waterloo.
see. So it's not like the Oscars
Yeah.
where the movies in 73 are nominated in 74.
right,
Got
exactly.
it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, well then I cheated incorrectly.
yeah.
It just goes to show you, kids. Don't
So
cheat.
for-
But I still think it shows the strength of them as
Yes.
a group.
Well,
That you
this
see that
song-
performance and you're like, they're stars.
yes.
Like that didn't launch them to the world, but it did
Yeah.
launch them to Sweden because
Yeah.
that sound was brand new
Yeah.
at that time.
Yeah.
I do think that there is something in talking about the contrast between Ring Ring, but definitely Waterloo and Empty Room, right? Empty Room feels a little throwbacky, and there is something about the innovation of some of these numbers.
ABBA normally wrote their songs in both languages. Even
Mhm.
Chess, they wrote
Mhm.
Chess in Swedish as well. It's one of the
Right.
few times where a musical has
Yeah.
two languages where it's not translated.
Yeah.
It's like the writers
It's like the
actually wrote
Two
writers
it.
separate,
actually-
yeah.
yeah.
There's a comfortability too that they have on stage.
Yes.
That's the difference between that and a lot of episodes of an American Idol. There's that little bit of this is someone who was
Right.
plucked out of their home because they're really talented, but has not really had a lot of experience on stage. And you look at ABBA and they're just like, we're here.
John Legend is not going to come and perform in a singing competition.
Right,
if
right.
There's a chance
Where
that he's
he
going to
will
lose.
lose.
Yeah. But what I've sort of learned is the nation's like biggest stars
Yeah.
are like
Yeah.
coming to compete.
Well, because in many ways, I think a lot of them treat them like people do charts here. Like
Right.
having a number 3 is not embarrassing.
Sure.
I mean, you look at the global success of ABBA, but they still didn't get it on their first try.
Mhm.
Oh my God. This is totally when you have a kid going to be the story you tell.
Even
Even ABBA
ABBA.
didn't get Eurovision on their first try. But-
Try again.
Yeah.
Just like ABBA.
Talk about cultural mythology.
Oh my gosh.
Tying
Green lights
it
are showing
down.
right now.
There were 4 Swedish singers
What-
once upon a time, and they took the stage with a wonderful song called Ring Ring.
I have to say, all I'm thinking of now is imagining sitting down to watch Vaesen when it airs, and the whole thing is just randomly scored exclusively
yeah.
with ABBA
Oh,
songs.
yeah.
Oh my goodness, perfect. Well, we are moving to 1999.
Okay.
And this is Charlotte Nilsson with 1001 natt.
Utanför så är det mörkt nu. När det ljusnar vill jag vara i din närhet. Jag vill vakna upp med dig och känna att du älskar mig.
Oh yeah, 99. Look at this. Oh wow. Full band. And they're in tuxes. Okay. Oh, this is trickier. Very celebratory, which feels winning. And it even sounds sort of vaguely familiar. It doesn't feel as new or revelatory. Again, coming right after ABBA.
It's
Yeah.
definitely
Yeah.
not inspired by ABBA.
Sure. It has that sort of takeoff from it. I might say it goes on.
You're 100% correct.
Okay.
It won the whole thing.
And it won the whole thing. There you go.
Eurovision has had extended periods of time where the rule was that each country had to participate in a language that is an official language of the country.
Okay, gotcha.
There was a few years gap, which is when ABBA won with Waterloo.
Okay.
Every time they institute the language rule, like the UK and Ireland win everything because like
Right.
more people know English.
Yeah.
1999 was the first year after the long reign of the language rule
Mm.
that it was lifted.
Mm.
So Tusen og en natt became Take Me to Your Heaven.
Okay.
Take me to your heaven. Hold on to a dream. Take me to your heaven. When my nights are cold and long.
So our next number is by Måns Zelmerlöw. It is called Hope and Glory. This is 2009.
Don't stop. I'm still standing for hope and glory. I'll be fighting for my love story. I'm still standing for hope and glory now.
Oh boy, look at this like stage production. Crane shot, great dancing, really tight production. And I want to say it goes through and wins.
So that is incorrect.
Okay.
But Måns came back 6 years later
Uh-huh.
and won the entirety of Eurovision
Okay.
with the song Heroes. His innovation seems to really come from stage production.
Yeah, I mean it's wildly visual. It's interesting seeing each of these people, and there are certain things that are their particular strength.
Yeah.
That
Right.
sort of makes you go, oh, that's why they're special. All of us can do many wonderful things, but we know the thing that we do exceptionally well. So just after, watching some of the previous performers have this range, he may be perfectly, incredibly capable of that. But here, what we see that is so special is that production value.
I actually have nothing to add to that. That's incredible.
18 years earlier,
Mm.
in 1991,
Oh, okay.
we have Carola with Fångat av en stormvind. The title translates to Caught in a Windstorm, but it's using weather as an image of feeling. So
Oh, I
she's
already
caught
like
in the
that.
storm wind with this person.
I already really love this. Oh my God. Male backup dancers, please. I like there's the wind in her hair to go with the theme. She's giving it her all. It's effortless, her vocals. She's dancing. It's celebratory. Oh, yeah. Maybe I just like the 80s. She can belt. That's a win for me.
You are 100% correct.
Yay! Way to go.
Not just that, she has represented Sweden in Eurovision 3 times.
Yes. Great.
First time getting a 3rd place. This one won the whole thing,
Mhm.
and then a 5th place as
Mhm,
well.
mhm.
It's what I find so wild about that performance is, first of all, I don't think I've seen anyone have more energy ever
Yeah,
in my
yeah.
life, and the amount of dancing she does, and it
Yes.
does not affect her vocals
At all. It's that ease of singing, right?
She's
It's
like
just
doing
present.
jumping jacks
Yeah.
essentially, and you're
Well,
like,
because that was the 80s. It was aerobics, everything,
Right.
right?
Although I was watching it and I was like, I mean, it's brilliant because she can do it.
Yeah.
But I was like, this choreographer should be fired. Like, this is like such a cruel thing to do. You're like, sing
But
this
it-
big song
it
and
didn't
be like,
bother her at
yeah,
all.
she was like
She's just
nothing.
like,
It was
sure,
like,
no problem. Yeah, it's not at all in her voice. And I'm all for feeling and expression when you're
Yeah, yeah,
singing,
yeah.
but strain is a different story. And she's just like, this is what I do.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
sing.
yeah.
Incredible dancing, not quite those production value necessarily, but it's okay because it's that balance of
Yeah,
like,
right. Pre 1999, there's some limit to the production value because they have
Of
live
course.
orchestra.
of course.
Then they get rid of the live orchestra, and that's when
Yeah.
staging really becomes
Yeah.
a thing. 'Cause,
You're gonna
like,
have moving crane shots and
Yeah.
lights that can do
yeah, 'cause
anything
the
you want them
violinist
to,
doesn't
and a
like when
TV
the crane
screen.
comes in front of them.
Yeah.
But
So let's see if this next number
I mean, you
lives
did
up.
say you like the 80s.
I do.
So,
Yes.
Apparently.
So we are going to 1984. The song is called Diggy Loo Diggy Lay.
Ooh.
Not Swedish.
Okay. cool.
Just
Not English.
Yeah. Just
But the song is
Tooraloo
primarily in
Ralura.
Swedish. You will notice they have some golden shoes, and those are important to the storytelling of the song
okay.
because basically the lyric is Diggiloo Diggiley, everyone's looking at me, here I'm walking in my golden shoes.
That sort of tropical palm in the front. It's adorable. Oh my God, the little leg cross. Yeah. And the big band. Woo. Okay. I think it's really fun. I would listen to this song. I don't think it went through.
Okay, well, here's the thing.
Yeah.
It won the whole
It
thing.
did.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
the
this
80s
is the,
were wild.
Very wild.
Yeah. But I think also, a little bit what we talked about, the newness
Uh-huh,
earlier, is
uh-huh.
that there's a certain part of that aesthetic that in a different packaging that we are used to now.
Uh-huh.
This
Sure.
is before any of the American boy band.
The gods of Eurovision will probably strike me down for this, but there is something similar to the sort of ABBA thing
Uh-huh.
of just like watching this group come on stage
Uh-huh,
and be like, what is that?
I think that something society keeps rediscovering over and over again is that people do really like men in synchronized dances.
Because
Face
it
this.
works against their heterosexuality.
Maybe.
You think as recently as One Direction, right? Their thing was we don't dance. Because the ways, not like gay sexuality wise, but kind of like cheesy, campy, something
Mhm.
not quite man about them.
You're also talking about historically anything that young women like is considered cheesy and bad.
But that
Culture
even
will
when
say that
marketing the
it's-
next thing to 13
Yeah.
to 15-year-old girls, you have to be like, we're putting that aside.
Well, I think also there's a difference in different cultures and generations as you go by, because you look back at Fred Astaire, Gene Kelly. There were
Yes.
whole periods of dance, Jerome Robbins, where dance wasn't necessarily sexualizing you one way or the other. It was a
Right.
common practice for all genders at the time. So it didn't necessarily, if you danced, you weren't necessarily branded as any one thing, but that shifted certainly.
Yeah, and this is what happens in countries that have homophobic laws,
Yeah.
right? It's like you're almost not aware of gay people, so therefore heterosexual men can actually be a little bit more expansive in their
Right.
presentation.
So now we're moving to 2011,
Okay.
and you're going to watch Loreen with the song My Heart is Refusing Me, which in English means my heart is refusing me.
I wanna leave, but I'm lost. So now I can't break away. And although I made up my mind, my heart is refusing me.
Whoa, light change. Ooh, very powerful voice. And again, male dancers. Very cool change. And these dancers are great. She's a lot of presence. Really draws you in. I would televote. So yeah, I love it. I think she would go on and win.
I love this idea of the game people play where they say, I would, like sleep with someone.
I'd hit it, yeah.
Yeah, I'd hit it. I would.
Yeah.
But I love
I would
this.
hit that text message.
Yeah.
But I love this idea of like, I would televote.
Yeah.
I would
Oh
tell
my God.
That's
That's
a-
what I'm going to say when I want to sleep with someone. Clearly, I don't know how to swipe. So televoting is about the best thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, that's great. There's pretty flawless performance. It feels like a single. It feels like something I'd see on any big stage at a concert. Yeah.
Now, I personally agree with you.
Okay.
But this is
Sweden
the
did not agree with me.
Here's the thing that's outrageous about
Yeah.
this. Not only did it not make it to Eurovision, it didn't even make it to the national final.
Huh?
This
This is like one of the least confusing ones for me.
We are going to stay with the same artist.
Okay.
This is a year later. Again,
Oh,
Loreen.
her redemption.
Maybe. This song is called Euphoria.
She's working a wind machine. She's learned from Corolla. Oh, is there snow? So much hair. And it's a very daring look, but it's also like half the time you can't see her face, but it doesn't matter because the power of the vocal presence is there. So I'm going to go with Redemption. Yes, she makes it through.
100% correct. Won the whole thing. And that is like one of the like iconic wins in Eurovision.
Euphoria was a major smash, which does not always happen for Eurovision songs, and particularly then didn't happen. So she was a important step in Sweden's story, but she's also a very important step in Eurovision's story because that song.
What was her name again?
Loreen.
Loreen.
Her name is Lorina, but people would end up calling her Lorine because it's Lorine.
Okay.
So she basically Englishified the spelling.
Again, the ultimate Swedish move.
Moving to the last number, we're once again sticking with Loreen.
Oh my goodness.
And we're moving to 2023. This is Tattoo.
Violence playing and the angels crying. When the stars align, then I'll be there. No one care about tomorrow.
Already the visual is interesting and weird. Ooh, the nails.
First the hair, then the nails.
Is she in sand?
She is in a panini press, is my understanding.
Well, it looks like sand. on the
There's sand
ground.
in there. It's like a little panini press sandbox.
Oh, that's cool. That like,
Yeah.
That's cool. We've been talking a lot about these different things like, are you a dancer? Are you a singer? Are you production value? She's got pretty much all of it in pretty good levels, pretty spectacular levels. We talked about Angels at the beginning of this. Our production of Angels was in sand. So I am very well aware of how difficult it is to perform in sand with the dust up around you, breathing it in and all of that. So I have particular resonance.
Never considered that, but that's true.
Particular resonance with performing in sand on this. I would say she goes through.
And you're 100% right.
Yay.
And she became only the second artist and the first woman in the contest's history to win the whole thing twice.
Yay!
The winning act, the country that they represent, hosts the next year's Eurovision.
Okay.
So the reason that we are back in Sweden for the 50th anniversary is because of Loreen.
Nice.
So Deb, I just wanted to ask, having watched these clips, in thinking about what makes a Swedish Eurovision hit, do you have any takeaways?
The word that kept coming up for me is that celebratory quality of the songs, maybe the exception of Loreen, but there's still
like a dance beat.
There's like an outward
Yeah.
rather
There's like
than
an
inward.
anthemic kind of sense to it.
It's shared rather than sort of,
Yes.
pulled in, That feels like maybe a common thread.
Because Magnus pulled these clips. This was not a rigged game. But I think that does track these music producers who, at least in contemporary times, we're talking about like bubblegum pop in the 90s. So the idea that the Sweden songs that really hit have this sort of lightness, this upness, even Loreen, who has a kind of like darkness to her, there's a size and a scope to what she does that kind of does make it fit in that category.
I wish I knew more about pop in general.
Well, I do remember there was one moment in middle school
That's how long we've known each other.
where, but I very vividly remember it because, and this is why this is very cruel that we're making Deb do this, is like, Deb, not a pop music junkie.
This is my favorite story.
I think it might be your favorite story.
You asked me, do you like M&Ms? And I was like, do you mean the candy?
And I said, no, the rapper.
I said, the candy rapper? Like, I really did not understand what he was trying to say.
Okay. And on that
Anyway,
note,
yes.
Deb, thank you so
Thank
much for
you so
coming
much.
Thank you for
out.
having
This
me.
was,
That was
really,
fun.
really awesome.
Euroverse.
All right, Magnus. Well, I thought that was another great episode.
I agree. It was a good time. And thank you so much to Dr. Alban. Thank you so much to Deb.
Yes.
Great guests. And what a fun time. And now I'm even more excited about going to Sweden.
Yes. It's coming up so soon.
I know.
And because of that, we next week have an episode for you where we are looking at Eurovision 2024, touching on some of the broad themes that we've talked about over the course of the season. So this is a real sort of take stock of where we are now before we head into our final stretch before Malmo. And Magnus, do you want to talk about what our final stretch is?
Yes, because after next week, for the next 4 weeks, we will be reviewing the songs of 2024 with a live New York City audience. That's right. We're going to be at the Spot in Hell's Kitchen. So starting Thursday next week and weekly for 4 weeks, you can come join us at the Spot and be a part of the episodes that will be dropping the week after as we crown New York City's Best Eurovision Song 2024.
Yeah, I mean, there are going to be some really great surprise guests that we have lined up for you, some of whom have been on this podcast before and some of whom are new. We're also going to have some very, very cool live performances and Eurovision covers. So if you are interested at all, please come to the Spot Thursday nights. Just to give you the specific dates, that is Thursday, March 28th, Thursday, April 4th, Thursday, April 11th, and Thursday, April 18th.
And if you are not in New York City and you're really sad to miss it, don't worry. The Wednesday following those, the edited version of those lives will be coming out on all the regular platforms.
So we hope to see you there.
And until then, happy Eurovision.